Sunday, we've been meeting for the last 4 years in Saletti and in English, trying to reach some of these 100,000 Saletti people. Much to my lack of faith, but God's goodness, we have had Saletti unbelievers with us every Sunday for the last 4 years, one or two of whom are now professing faith. We're still very small, still often shambolic, but it's very encouraging to see God drawing slowly ones and twos to himself as we love them in the week. We have different activities like lots of other churches do, like East Seoul, kind of offering hospitality to people, visiting them, doing book tables where we have some of our own tracts and broadsides stolen from some of the guys here and their wisdom, which I'll put downstairs if you want to look at more. But that's more than enough about me. I don't know everybody on the panel, and I'm sure you don't either. So I thought we'd just begin by a little bit of introductions from everyone on here, just saying something about what they are doing in terms of their ministry, maybe something about church life, and something about what they love about Jesus. So in 2 minutes or less, Bob, something about yourself, what you love about Jesus, church and ministry life for you.
So I am an evangelist, an independent evangelist based in London. Of late, I find myself organizing things like this, or going to things like this and doing talks, or organizing things outside and away from the corner. It was from the corner and YouTube that most people have come to know about me. I go to a high church, so there's lots of beautiful liturgy there. And one thing that I love about our Lord is the fact that he was a man of great, I'm going to steal this one because I know everyone will pick it, a great well of compassion and a great well of human mercy, which, you know, is a blessing. And he expressed that to the worst and the wretched, which gives me great confidence. Because if the figures in the Bible can get into heaven, then thanks be to Jesus, so can I.
Absolutely. Chris, same for you.
Is this thing on? Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hi, so my name's Chris. I'm Chris at Speaker's Corner. I've been a Christian since I was 17. My first kind of ministry, if anything, was to those who were from the secular background. They were more atheists because that's kind of what I was involved in. A lot of people I knew were secular, and I wanted to preach the good news to them. But I ended up finding Jay Smith, and then later on I ended up finding Bob, and I got involved at Speaker's Corner, and I found that I was being called to give ministry to Muslims. And that's what I've been doing. My ministry is mostly online these days, although I will be at Speaker's Corner this Sunday and hopefully getting back into more of a rhythm of going there. And yeah, one thing I love about our Lord Jesus Christ is he is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the anchor and the foundation from which everything else flows. So when things get shaky, he's the firm foundation from which I can put both my feet on and stand firm.
Absolutely. Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, I'm Michael Jones. I run Inspiring Philosophy, YouTube channel. Mostly what I do is the YouTube channel. We make various videos. Lately, it's been a lot of reaction videos, shorts, and live streams. And we're breaking more into Islam as of the past few years, ever since I got challenged to debate child marriage. Sort of awoken a hatred of Islam for inside of me on that day. So yeah, we're doing a lot of that stuff. Day to day, we typically are just making a lot of different videos, putting them out, trying to get at least 4 or 5 out a week on the internet. But we put them on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere we can possibly put them. So we're putting out a lot of stuff like that, and that's day to day typically what we're doing. So a lot of stuff around that.
And something about Jesus?
So yeah, one of the biggest things for me is just the way Jesus was just a suffering servant. It's always been inspiring for me because he's not like a God who sits on his throne and throws down lightning bolts. He came and served, and he calls us to serve. So he doesn't ask us to do anything that we wouldn't do.
Thank you. Jay.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of all time because I've been doing it longer than anybody else on this stage here. And it's been great to see this whole new generation. Aren't these guys amazing? It's just terrific. And I'm looking at so many of you, guys and gals, who are taking up the baton that we started, and we are now passing it on to you. And I think that's the thing that I'm working on most right now. I do have a YouTube channel, Fander Films, but we've started this Master of Arts program in the United States, and we have about 350 students who are training up in apologetics and polemics, so it can be used all around the world. And then, as far as what I think about Jesus, my goodness, I don't think I can do a debate or a discussion without bringing him into it, because he wins every debate for me. He wins every discussion. Isn't it great that the people that we're working with, the Muslims, the one thing they always want to hammer us with is the person we want to talk about. They're the ones that bring up Jesus. God bless them. They're the ones that bring up the Bible. God bless them. What better subject do you want to talk about than those two? They're the easiest people to work with.
Right. Thank you, Christus Victor. Thank you. And David of Speaker's Corner.
Hi, everyone. David from Speaker's Corner. So I've been a Christian my entire life. I was born into a Christian family. I have always been around Muslims in one way or another. I did spend time living in Nigeria, which, as some of you may know, is quite overrun with Muslims. So they've always been around from when I was a kid up until now. I will say what's been interesting in the last couple of years is they've been more loud and boisterous than they were in the years that followed, at least in my personal experience. And so following on from passing on the baton, like Jay Spitz just talked about, I'm one of those who try to pick it up and run with it and see how far I can get. You'll normally find me at the corner, trying to debate, but mostly getting people to run away from me. It must be something about the way I look. I'm not entirely sure. But it's probably the voice too. I think, actually, you know what we should do? We should both get on stage at the corner, and both of us need to give a speech. You start, I finish it, and then the Muslims run. I think we should probably do that.
What a voice. Doesn't he have a great voice?
I tried to.
And
Yeah? Appreciate it. And I'm also a part-time God Logic impersonator, so when he's busy, I take over. So you can call me Avery if you want, just going forward. And very lastly, the thing that I love about Jesus, to encapsulate it, I'm actually going to take this from a friend of mine. I have an Orthodox friend who taught me something interesting. There's a notion or an idea that is said about Jesus, but also about Adam in the Greek. So he is a whole anthropos, and effectively that just means the man. So it's normally ascribed to Adam as he is the first man, but it's more correctly applied to Jesus because he is the man. He is the one that we all want to be like, aspire to be like, and will be like when we see him again. So I think that's a very resounding notion for our Lord Jesus Christ.
thank you very much. Thank you for sharing and introducing yourselves. Now, the title for this panel is The Islamic Dilemma. Put your hands up if you know what that means. That's good. That's good. I'm not entirely clear. So, Bob, what is the Islamic dilemma? And we'll go from there.
As I understand it, it is that the Quran, it's a particular argument that David Wood and others are pushing quite a lot, and Chris is leading on that from our end, where we just point out the fact that the Quran affirms the Bible. But if the Quran affirms the Bible as true, then Islam is false. But if the Bible is false, then Islam is still false because the Quran affirmed that which is false. And so this is a dilemma. Whichever way it plays out, Islam ends up being false. So that's how I understand the dilemma.
Chris, would you agree he's summarized your position well?
No. No, that's yeah, great. That's spot on pretty much. I think the Islamic dilemma has a lot of branches to it. There's a lot of different places it can go. But broadly, yeah, every branch is the same thing. It says something, it confirms something that simply cannot be the case. Therefore, it's not coherent, so it's wrong. And that's every branch of the Islamic dilemma.
Can you show us just one example before we move to others of what you mean?
Okay, so you can the Quran talks about the people of the book. Now that is understood from their paradigm as being the Jews and the Christians. Okay, great. Now the Quran came down at a particular place and a particular time in history, the 7th century, Arabia, the Hijaz. The issue we're going to have is we're going to have something like a Muslim saying, the Quran is for all mankind. It's for everyone. It's God's final revelation. It can't just be for a small group. It has to be for all people. But then on the other hand, if you're going to say, well, okay, well, if we look at this in this historical context, and we look at who the Christians and Jews were, that particular group which is mentioned in the Quran, what are they like? And if it's not all Christians and Jews, it's just some, then you end up with a book that actually doesn't actually speak truth for all mankind. It's actually only talking about a very specific group of heretical Christians and Jews in the Hijaz. That's one potential sort of cutoff for the Islamic dilemma. The other one is the fact that, okay, well, maybe it does mean all Christians and all Jews across the whole world. Okay, great. But the Quran tells them they need to be accountable to their book, to the Injil and to the Torah. But all of Christianity at this point, across all of Christendom, for example, were Nicene Creed believing Trinitarians, apart from small heretical groups. Now, there were issues after the Council of Chalcedon in 451. There were some issues about Jesus' nature, but they all affirm the Nicene Creed. So all of a sudden, what's the Quran just done? It's now got a moral dilemma. The Quran is telling these Christians to follow their book, and they have the scripture, but we know we know what all of the churches had in terms of their canon. What does it say? It says that Jesus is Lord. He's the Son of God. He was crucified and he was resurrected. So now they're morally accountable to follow those beliefs. But they can't be, because that would mean the Quran is incoherent and self-destructs. So that's just two examples.
Thank you. So and you've kind of been doing some of that on YouTube. David, have you kind of given something of this dilemma on the ground at Speaker's Corner on the ladder, and how has it been received?
Yes, both as David and as Avery. Yes, we have we've both given this quandary to people online and in person. So, in terms of how it's received, I hear a lot of no's coming back at me. No, it doesn't say this. No, it doesn't say that. Yes, the Quran says the Bible is corrupted. The challenge then would be to show us where. And all of the verses that they can bring from the Quran do not explicitly claim that the notions in the Bible are wrong. Instead, they chastise or criticize certain groups of people for either misrepresenting some text, changing words in their place, or covering up words that are there. No one is actually saying, or the author of the Quran isn't saying a wholesale corruption of all the texts that the Christians and Jews have exists. So in terms of the responses that we're hearing, the only, I guess, notable ones are coming from the online space. And they're quite humorous in their response, because what we're hearing currently is that the Quran is not affirming every word in the Torah and the Injil or the Bible, but it is giving a general affirmation of the core teachings of these texts, such as, and only, there is one God. And that is the extent to which the Quran is apparently affirming the Torah and the Injil, according to the replies that we've heard. But one quandary that I then place back to them is in the context that the Quran was revealed in the 7th century. Often the Quran will have these lines such as, has the story of X not reached you? Recall the story of Mary when she, recall the story of Jesus when he. You wouldn't be able to recall any of this if the source text for these stories weren't present with the people who the Quran is responding to. And so that's something that I also raise. And as far as a response, I'm not getting anything substantive from them.
Nothing yet. Michael, would you have anything to kind of add to this discussion so far in terms of how you've used it or not?
Yeah, it's very helpful to just pull up the verses in the Quran to use against them. So you go to like Surah 568, where the Christians are told by Allah that you must believe in the Torah, the gospel, and what your Lord has revealed to you. Okay? Now, notice what it does here. It doesn't tell Muslims to judge. It says for us Christians to judge. Okay, we get to decide, and we are to judge by what has been revealed to us. So Muslims can't come and say, yeah, you're to reveal by this lost, incorruptible Injil. No. Allah didn't talk to you in the Quran. He's actually addressing Christians. Allah is addressing all of you. And he's telling you to judge by what your Lord has revealed to you. What has our Lord revealed to us? The Old Testament and the New Testament. Okay. Then we can look at those and go, well, Quran's false. And we're doing exactly what Allah told us to do. So we have a great excuse on Judgment Day now. What We did exactly what you told us to do, Allah. Muslims want to put themselves in the judgment seat, and they want to be like, no, we're going to tell you what the Injil is. We're going to tell you what the Torah is. No, you don't get to do that. Allah isn't talking to you. He's talking to us. He's telling us to go by what has been revealed to us. And we have the New Testament. Sorry, you don't get to decide what has been revealed to us. And they got nothing for that because Allah does not tell them to judge. They'll try some loopholes, like they'll try to go to like Surah 548, which we can talk about with Muhammad there. But it's not because Allah talks to Christians. We're in the judgment seat on this, and you need to use that because you cannot let them tell you what is the gospel. No, you get to decide based on what God has revealed to us.
And just between ourselves, then, what other kind of dilemmas are there or internal contradictions? So we've talked a little bit about the Torah and the Injil, confirming and therefore denying the Quran. What other internal contradictions might you want to push? Anyone?
Let me go and give one that follows on from what he is saying. And that is the Quran then instructs Muslims also to go back. And it says very clearly, if you have any question, chapter 10, verse 94, chapter 21, verse 7, if you Muslims have any questions, go to those people who have been given the Tawrat and the Injil, the Torah and the Gospels. So they are good for them to go back to. So if there is a problem with the Quran, the Bible itself, then why in the world is it telling them to go back to a corrupted book? Chapter 4, verse 136, for I have given you both the Tawrat and the Injil and your Quran as a revelation for you. So it's telling them again that the Bible is alongside the Quran. And one of the things I love to ask them is, okay, is there any reference in the Quran that says there is a problem with the Bible? There is this corruption that you're always talking about. And in 40 years, I have yet to find one verse. It's just what you're saying. Be careful of those who covered it up with their hands, or the Jews. The only one that really comes out is chapter 2, verse 79. And chapter 2, verse 79 says, be careful of those Jews who do not know the book. They would guess and write the hand with their own book. So these are Jews who do not know the book. They would guess and then write the book with their own hands. Well, if they don't know the book, that's obviously they're not talking about they don't know the Bible. So they would guess, what are they writing? Well, what are these referring to? These are the apocryphal accounts. These are the Jewish apocryphal accounts, which the Quran is full of. And they say, let's see exactly what it's warning you of. Beware of those Jews who write with their own hands. They know not the book, and they write with their own hands. What is that? Well, let's try chapter 5, verse 31 and 32. Let's see this great verse that you're talking about that says, O children of Israel, for there are those who do not know. Let me get it right. O children of Israel, do not take the blood of one, for he who takes the blood of one is if those who take the blood of one, let me get it right.
As if he kills everyone?
Something like...
The blood of he who takes the blood of one is if he takes the blood of all. He who saves the blood of one is if he saves the blood of all. Now, Muslims love it because that is the verse on peace. But no, it isn't. That comes from the Targum of Jonathan ben Uzziah. We know exactly who wrote it. We know when it was written. We know why it was written. That is the very thing that chapter 2, verse 79 is warning you about. And you can go from reference after reference. Chapter 21, with the story of Abraham there, who is building the Masjid al-Haram, which they believe is the Kaaba. That comes from the Mishnah of Rabbah, written in the 2nd century. The story of Solomon and the hoopoe bird. Isn't that a great story? I wish I had that in Sunday school. It's not in our Bible because it comes from the 2nd Targum of Esther. These are the things that chapter 2, verse 79 is warning them of. So it's our own goal. In fact, it's shooting itself in the foot. Use the Quran to your advantage and show them that these are dilemmas for them, not for us.
Yeah, that's helpful, isn't it? Kind of showing mythic sources behind it. That in some sense is easy for anybody to do. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's not an expert thing or a specialist thing in many ways. Michael?
Yeah, there's another dilemma you can use, like Surah 355 and Surah 61:14. Jesus is told his followers will be made uppermost. Oh, okay. Well, who were the followers of Jesus that were made uppermost? Well, the Nicene Christians were. So it says, and you can even add Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq in the Sirah on page 653 says, who were the followers of Jesus? Well, 2 of them were Peter and Paul, who went to Rome. Oh, that evil Paul, yes. Well, Ibn Ishaq says that was one of the followers. So who were made uppermost? Well, it was the Nicene Christians. Okay, so if Allah is right and we were made uppermost, okay, well, then the Quran is wrong because they were believing theology and pushing theology that contradicts the Quran. But also, if those are not the followers of Jesus, then the Quran is also wrong because it confirmed early followers of Jesus that did not teach Islam. So it's another dilemma.
Thank you.
I think you can sort of categorize the dilemmas as contradictions against science, contradictions against history, contradictions of internal logic. So, there's the story of Moses and the Pharaoh in two parts of the Quran, and in exactly the same place in both stories, the words that are either ascribed to Pharaoh's advisors said to Pharaoh, or to Pharaoh said to his advisors. The like synoptic problems. I often find that these kinds of arguments are best used as counterpunches. So you wait until a Muslim establishes a standard by his attack upon the Bible. So he like with Avery and Paul, like when with Avery's Paul's presentation, you wait until the Muslim da'i has established the standard. Oh, synoptic contradictions mean that the Bible can't be trusted, or historical contradictions mean that the Bible can't be trusted. And then once they've established that standard, you identify it, reverse it, and give the counter example. One example that I love was given by Father Zacharias Boutros of the Coptic Church, where he talked about, the fact that Muslims often boast that no one can match the words of Allah. But there's an entire chapter of the Quran, which is the chapter of the jinn, in which there's a lengthy speech by the jinn in the Quran, and these are the words of the jinn. And Allah is therefore testifying that this speech by the jinn is equal to his own words, because it's in the Quran. So this challenge of produce a surah like it has already been met. The jinn did it for us. So, that's just another one.
Thank you. Chris, would you add any?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing as well. There's something that the more I've been going through the Quran, I've been part of David Wood's project to just go through the Quran on a surah by surah basis, looking at any ayah that has anything to do with the Islamic dilemma, taking note of it and just analyzing it, looking at tafsirs and trying to see not just like with particular verses, because, we 66 to 68, 43 to 48, we know a lot of these and these are great. But I think it misses just the overwhelming holistic approach of the entire Quran. The entire point of it, apart from a few particular surahs that have their own agenda, is trying to convince the Christians and Jews as a primary objective that they ought to believe in Muhammad because Muhammad is a prophet and their covenant with Allah is binding still in the 7th century. What that means is you need to follow all of the prophets from their perspective. Adam, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa. You need to follow all of them, and then notice that Muhammad is prophesied in your Torah and Injil that you have with you in the 7th century, and therefore accept Muhammad as a prophet and believe in Islam. This is one of the main arguments in the Quran over and over and over again, and it actually puts blame on the Jews and the Christians for failing to follow their covenant. But here's a really interesting question. If the previous scriptures have been corrupted, the Injil and the Torah, then before Muhammad came, before he was ever on the scene, according to the Quran, the Christians and Jews, say for example, 500 AD, right? So it's before Muhammad came. Jews and Christians are still accountable to what they have with them. But we know from the manuscript evidence what that was. We know the kind of beliefs and doctrines the church had. What does that mean then? It means the Quran is telling us, hey, you're going to be accountable to hellfire unless you follow the covenant with Allah found in the Bible, the biblical text. Great. It couldn't be more clearer. It's self-refuting. It demonstrates that the author or authors of the Quran did not fully understand what the Torah and the Injil contained.
I think it brings home the fact that as a necessary part of this argument, Christians need to familiarize ourselves with the textual traditions of other churches, like the Ethiopian church and the Assyrian church, that were both active in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century.
Does that mean it's really hard to do it then? We've got to learn our book, their book, other traditions' books. How does your average Joe and Jane Christian do that?
Well, I think the Islamic dilemma works at different levels, and you can take it as deep as you want. And each layer of argument that you add on to the Islamic dilemma requires more learning, but there's a very basic level that just requires a good use of the Quran. I've done it with Muslims that I've been speaking to. Just show me one clear verse in the Quran which says that the Injil is being corrupted. He's a very honest Muslim. He went away, he did the research, he came back and he said, I couldn't find one. So you can just do it at that basic level, but you can really strongman your argument, ironman your argument by adding extra layers of evidence, like the textual traditions of the Ethiopian and Syrian churches of their Bibles and what they were doing, what they believed, and because they were the ones active in the Arabian Peninsula at the time.
I mean, you could do it with one verse, as he said, there's layers, but Surah 29:46. Muslims are commanded by Allah to say, we believe in what has been revealed to us and what has been revealed to you. So a Muslim tries to convert you. No. You're supposed to say you believe in what we have been revealed. You're not supposed to say our scriptures are corrupted. You're commanded. And so you've one verse. That's all you need, but you can use all the other ones too. Again, it's everywhere in the Quran. It's like whoever wrote this had no idea what was in the Bible.
I just want to add one thing as well. There's been a lot of pushback to the Islamic Dilemma from Muslims. All the Dawah guys, they talk about this quite a lot now because they know it's effective. They know it's effective. Their communities ask them for it. Here's a little trick. When you see a Muslim channel produce a video about a particular topic saying how to refute the Islamic dilemma, how to refute XYZ, this Quran contradiction, it's because there are Muslims behind the scene emailing them saying, I am struggling with this, Aki, my iman is struggling. Can you please give me an answer to this? And they get enough of these that they go, I've got to make a video about it. I don't think that any of the big Dawah guys like making these kind of videos about the Islamic dilemma because they know it's just silly, right? We've been looking at Sajid Lipman, he's been making responses. They've just been the most ridiculous responses you can imagine. There've been all these guys trying to respond, but they cannot. And they go down to these deep levels because they're trying to find any kind of way out. And what we've been doing is just meeting them at every level. At every level and say, no, if you do that, if you say that, this means this, there is no way out. This is probably one of the most investigated things, like contemporary, in terms of polemics about Islam. And it's absolutely destroying for the Islamic paradigm.
Just to push on this a little bit and kind of talking about layers and Bob saying this honest friend that came back without being able to produce a Quranic verse, and you've seeing YouTube videos trying to respond but doing it badly. Can you anyone give some encouragement, some testimonies of how these kinds of arguments have really shaken individuals?
So I can give one immediately.
Yeah.
Actually, not too long ago, there was a man called Bilal, was his Islamic name. He came to Speaker's Corner, and a few people may actually know of this man. He became quite an extreme Muslim in the sense that he belonged to Anjem Chowdhury's kind of sect. So he was kind of out there, and he was like that for 9 years. He used to go to Speaker's Corner, he used to give talks. But a few months ago, he came back to Speaker's Corner, not as a Muslim anymore. Now, he's not a Christian either, which I hope one day, Lord willing, he does. He does, But one of the things he did is he just said, you know what, I went away and I looked at all the things the Quran talks about. Dual Qarnayn, the Proto-Evangelion of James, the Gospel of Pseudo-Matthew. Why is the Quran quoting them? The Quran tells the Christians that and Muslims that the Injil is guidance and light. And the Christians have nothing to stand on unless they stand on the Injil. But the Quran also seems to think the Injil is these weird apocryphal things that Christians have never held as scriptural truths. And yet, and he was just mocking these Muslim Dawah guys that he used to believe in, that he put his faith in, saying, why didn't you tell me about Dual Qarnayn? Why didn't you tell me about Mary in the temple? Why didn't you tell me about these things? Because he knows now that that's not correct at all. It's an obvious copying, and it's another part of the Islamic dilemma.
Thank you.
I mean, I've been talking with David Wood behind the scenes, and we expected when we were going to start pushing the Islamic Dilemma, we expected the Dawah guys to start addressing us later in the year. They immediately jumped on it, which tells us their followers are panicking. And so they're going crazy. I uploaded a video on the Islamic Dilemma to TikTok, and that's where they've all gone because they're going after people that are very ignorant of this kind of stuff, and it's TikTok. My video got 300,000 views on there. And so it's it's getting out to them. They're in panic mode and they don't know what to do about this. So we need to push it because they're the followers, the more lukewarm Muslims, it will affect them even more.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a maturing of the polemical arguments against Islam. So, Jay and Hatun destroyed the myth of the one Quran. David, Matthew, and Chris and others are now pushing this Islamic dilemma. And kudos to them for saturating the market. And I think that's actually a way forward for us as Christians, is that all of us that are working in this field, when we got a good argument, we all push it at the same time and control the debate by doing that. But then you've got, so what we're seeing is a maturing of Christian polemic against Islam that we need to permeate around the church. Because really, it's only in recent years that the church has been able to get hold of Islamic material, Islamic sources, read it for ourselves in a way where we're not dominated under an Islamic society and come up with these arguments. And so this collection of well-worked polemics is going to bear fruit and is bearing fruit. So my friend that I'm not going to nearly named, but not going to name, when he came back and he couldn't find a verse that said that the Injil was corrupted, well, I challenged him then. Well, you've got to believe the Quran, which says to believe in the Injil, and so you could see that it had an impression upon him, and his attitude with some other events has changed over the years. He's gone from being quite hard line to actually, seriously asking much more sincere engagement with Christianity.
So just thinking about that then, kind of the individual Muslim person that you might meet in a tea room that you've set up, or in your ESOL classes, neighbour, schoolgate, and thinking of your layers, how do we help the non-specialist Christian to reach a Muslim person confidently? So to kind of ask the question and then have a follow-up and not be swamped or scared, do you think?
Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Imitate us. Plagiarize us. Do it. I tell people all the time, plagiarize my videos. I don't care. Just do it.
Let me jump in here. Much of what these guys are doing here, these young guys on the internet, is really shutting down the major players on the world stage, not the people that you're talking about. The people you're talking about who are in the streets, the people who are out in the villages, the people who are in the schools, they're watching those videos. And that's why, in some ways, they're not really talking to the people in the streets. They're shutting down the people like Saul's who became Paul's. And that's why don't ask them to go down to that level, because of the fact that because of the vehicles that we have today, like TikTok and YouTube, these are going out all over the world. And so even though it's happening mostly here in London because of Speaker's Corner, it's the only place on earth where you can really engage that quickly and with some of the best and the brightest. The fact that the impact that they're making all over the world, and we're seeing that impact, those of us who travel, and we're seeing that that's filtering down into the madrasas, that's filtering down into certainly the schools that we come across, and that's why I think it's terrific. You don't necessarily have to know all these arguments. You don't have to be quick on the uptake like they are. Let them do that. Your job, and most of those of you who have people that you are next to or who you are going to school with, or people that have Muslims in your family, you don't have to learn these arguments. Just show them the videos. And let the videos speak for you. Because they are seeing their best and the brightest being humiliated. Not because they are not good speakers. It's the content of what they're saying has been humiliated. It's the arguments that they have been using that they had assumed were completely tight, and now they're being emasculated just because these guys are taking them back to their own scriptures. Let that be the vehicle that they use. So we're not asking that you all have to learn these arguments, nor do you have to be as fast and quick talking as they are, or even as loud as most of us are, or have a voice like he has.
So just have lots of phone numbers that we can WhatsApp people there.
I would just say on that, get network with learned evangelists, and when you've taken that conversation as far as you can, just say to them, look, I can take you to a person of knowledge who can answer your questions, and then take them to people like us, network with us so that we can do more work. I would just say though, because you're at this conference, you are the kind of people that really should be ahead of the curve. You know, that's why you're here after all. And then, you know, it can perforate outwards. So learn it to the level that you can, is all I would say.
It's helpful. David?
We can always do more, but I'd actually echo what Jay said. So in regards to just something as simple as sharing a video, I remember more than 10 years ago when I was still in school, I had my friends sending me Zakir Naik videos.
3-hour-long ones.
Exactly, about how he was refuting Christians. So that was in their minds an effective way of actually showing me the fruits of Islam. Now, I would send them back very lengthy notes as to everything he got wrong and misquoted. But let's just say that the fact that the responses that you're seeing now from the Muslim da'is on the internet, even I've seen some who are trying to create a Christian dilemma. When you're in the schoolyard and you're having an exchange with somebody verbally, and then the person starts to repeat the insults you said against them back to you, that's when you know it hurts. So the fact that we're seeing responses to this dilemma by them attempting to also create dilemmas means that for the person responding, for the people asking them for the response, it does hurt. And so if so far all we've been doing is doing the videos, sharing the videos, and then potentially also taking some people to learn at people, that appears to be working so far. So I think the best thing to do is just to do more of all those things. More sharing, more evangelism to Muslims on the streets, and then more specialized individuals can come into the scene and actually challenge Muslims online or in person.
Yeah, Muslims are very good at liking, commenting, and sharing on their videos. That's why they go very far. If Christians had the same zeal, we liked every Christian video, commented on it, even if it's just great job, loved it, and then shared it, that's going to help. That's going to take the algorithm. Those videos are going to go so much further. So every Christian should be doing that for Christian videos.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And it inspires. And what Dave meant there was like, share, and subscribe. Bob of Speaker's Corner. But what just to demonstrate it, like I was inspired by Jay Smith. I saw videos of Jay Smith. We met years and years ago, but then I started watching his videos, and it was like finally, it was like nourishment to my soul, because I was living in a Muslim area and getting hammered all the time about the faith. And so Jay inspired me. He inspired Chris. I think he inspired you.
By proxy of you guys, yes.
Yeah. So the point is, what this work and this effort is doing is it's getting more Christians into this kind of apologetics and polemics. And it's galvanizing the church to a greater evangelism. And the place of public debate is social media. So we need to be militant, we need to be activist in flooding social media with Christian messaging.
Thank you. Just something that, having had been sent 2 to 3 hour Zakir Naik videos in the past, the most effective way I found, rather than writing out essays which people don't read in response, is actually sitting down and watching, which is absolutely painful, with the Muslim friends. Okay, we'll watch this together, because they want to say how great it is, but actually then pausing it every 5 seconds to say he's wrong here, misquotes the Quran, he misquotes the Bible, but actually pausing it every time, and then saying, I've got a much shorter video to show you, will you watch that? Which, yeah, the short stuff is really helpful. Thank you. I think that is helpful, just to say there's lots of resources out there. We don't have to know everything. But as Bob said, if you're here, you should know a little bit more than the average. But all of us can pass things on to our congregations and friends to share with others. Now, to move on to be more critical, Jay, I've heard it say that you think this dilemma is useless.
No.
Did I say that? Oh dear, I'm in the wrong company then.
Oh boy.
What am I doing?
To be more English, you've been critical of using this dilemma. We're going to have more
They wanted me up here. I didn't know what I'm doing up here, except this is not my area.
We're going
Intervention next.
to have more. We're going to have more of your.
Let me answer that.
I haven't finished yet. We're going to have more of your particular approach on Saturday. But why have you been critical of using this at all?
Basically, they are correct. I use these arguments for 30 years. I started using this back in 1992, when my wife and I first arrived here. And I found that a lot of the material that I was using, we didn't have it as well polished here. We didn't have these quick comebacks like you all have now. We didn't have your mind. Correct. I used these arguments for 30 years. I started using this back in 1992, when my wife and I first arrived here. And I found that a lot of the material that I was using, we didn't have it as well polished here. We didn't have these quick comebacks like you all have now. We didn't have your minds. We didn't have your enthusiasm. We just didn't have your eloquence either. Well, we're talking about 5 of us. And I was the only one that had any Islamic background. And what we did do is we had to go and we had to shut down Muhammad. And we had to shut down his violence. And we had to talk about his misogyny. And it just felt dirty. I just felt dirty. I would go home and I'd say, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to talk about this man, Muhammad, anymore. But I had to do it the next week, and the next week, and the next week. And after a while, I just said, I'm getting sick and tired of talking about this man who I want nothing to do with. And I'm getting sick and tired of getting beat up also, because you can talk about the Quran, and they're not going to make a big ballyhoo about it. You can talk about Allah, and they're going to try to sit there and maybe even walk away. But once you mention Muhammad, it's like a switch turns on inside, and they go visceral. You do not touch Muhammad. And you can see why. That's all they've got. They want what we have. We've got Jesus Christ. Therefore, they're going to go to Muhammad. They have no one else they can go to as a paradigm, as a model. And so I just got sick and tired of this internal critique. I got sick and tired of reading that book, reading verse after verse. That just bothered me. I just did not like all that, the horrendous stuff that I had to feed on and feed on. And that's why I said, for me, I've moved away now from the internal critique and let these guys do it. They're so much better. They're so much quicker. They're so much younger. And they have such a nice voice. And so for me, I love now that I don't have to go back and use this material. But you all need to do it. So I wouldn't say it's useless. No, I don't know where you got that word. I said for me, I no longer want to do it. I want to go to the historical critique. And that's coming on Saturday. And you'll see why. We're going to go to the historical critique. But I know that some of you are not convinced, especially Bob over here. So we're going to have a debate in the panel on Saturday, it looks like.
Yeah, so it's not an advert for the historical critique. But yeah, Bob, how would you respond to...
Well, I mean, I like if you had the same meal every day for 30 years, I think you'd be pretty sick of it as well. But the thing about the internal critique is that it is like, you know, to use a boxing metaphor, it's a series of jabs. And there's the occasional proper right hook. There's a proper right cross in there as well. But the wonderful thing about the internal critique is they're small, discrete, self-enclosed arguments, which are easy to learn, easy to repeat. And it's like, it's death via 1,000 cuts. And we shouldn't give it up. And of course, we absolutely should criticize Muhammad, because Muhammad for the Muslim is the paradigm, which means if Muhammad did it, the Muslim feels that they could at least possibly do it. And if you look and play that out in your mind, what that means, that could mean the reintroduction to slavery, could mean the reintroduction of child marriage, could mean the apartheid system of religious dimitude. There's a lot of bad things that come with imitating a man like Muhammad, and we absolutely must critique Muhammad. But I would give a cautionary note, is just be conscious of where you're doing that. All right? Be conscious of where you're doing that, what company you're doing that, because there was a recent episode in Bradford where someone criticized Islam, said it wasn't a religion of peace, on his street. He lives on a Muslim street. Within 24 hours, his car was on fire and his house was broken into and smashed up. To prove, obviously, that Islam is a religion of peace. And I mean, but we laugh because of the irony of it, but the point is that man's life has just been savagely attacked. So there really is consequences to this. So you do have to be careful when you say it, to whom you say it, and how you say it. And also, you've got political issues that we might get onto tomorrow, so I won't go into those here, around institutionalizing sensitivity towards Islam, but that's not for today.
Yeah,
let me just jump from that real quickly before you get into this. And that is, for this argument works well in Europe. It works well in the United States. It's brilliant on the internet. But I have to go to Nigeria, I have to go to Ethiopia, I have to go to Kenya, I have to go to all these other countries where they are being hacked to death. You go to Nigeria, and almost all of my students in Nigeria, the ones that are in training, they all have machete wounds. So they know in their family, they have people who have been killed or raped or been beheaded just because they are Christians. And to give this kind of material to them doesn't work. They tell me we cannot use this kind of material in Nigeria because we wouldn't get out alive. Exactly what happened in Bradford, it happens even greater in Nigeria. So in some areas of the world where I have to go, this I no longer use because it's just not viable. But you can use it in London. You can use it all over Britain. You can use it in Europe. You can use it in much of India and certainly other parts of Asia and certainly North and South America. But you need to be wise because it will kill you very quickly.
Thank you. And we will talk about kind of culture, politics, socioeconomic stuff tomorrow. But I think it is helpful just to think a little bit about how best to use this because it can come across as confrontational. Now, confrontation isn't necessarily a problem, but how practically do you think it is that we should be sharing these things with people we meet at book tables, our neighbours, friends? Yeah, what wisdom would you have in terms of how we do this?
I mean, one thing that I would say is use these arguments as counterpunches. Wait until the da'i have attacked your faith with a particular kind of argument. Oh, there's a contradiction in the Bible, therefore the Bible can't be trusted. And then just as Avery was teaching you with regards to Paul, like just flip it around and go, okay, so you've created the standard that contradictions mean books can't be trusted. Let me show you a contradiction in the Quran. Or, you've called Paul, our great teacher and apostle, Paul, you've called him a liar. You've called him a fraud. That's really insulting. Let me tell you some things about Muhammad. Use them as counterpunches. And then obviously, just be conscious of your tone and your energy, because especially when if you're going to talk, I've been in Muslim areas and said things about Muhammad, but I've kept a certain tone and a certain energy that meant that the person responded more like I was raising a question. So it's just being conscious about your tone and your energy, depending on your context and situation. So that's about emotional intelligence. Reading the room, reading the situation. You maybe don't go and call Muhammad a paedophile if you are a back alley with 6 Muslims who are all wearing face masks. That read the situation and the context.
Other wisdom to share that?
I want to jump in. With the Islamic Dilemma, just internally, or a little bit with a historical kind of approach, you can present it in a way that isn't defaming. Yeah. And you can do it in a really kind of interfaith kind of way. You can go up to a Muslim and just say, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a people of the book. Oh, you know people of the book. Yeah. So do you know what that means, though? Do you know your Quran talks about us? Oh, yeah, you're in the Quran. Do you know it mentions our scripture, the Injil? Oh, okay. Do you know it tells us that we have nothing to stand on unless we stand on the Injil? Oh, and then you might get someone who says, oh, it's been corrupt. And you're like, oh, has it? Can you show me a verse? A bit like what you said. Can you show me a verse in the Quran that says the Injil has been corrupted? And then they go away and they can... You see, there are ways that you can do so non-argumentatively. It depends on context and the kind of Muslim you're trying to evangelize to.
Any more wisdom on that to share? Doesn't have to be. Slightly naughty question off the back of that, though. All blokes up here, is this a male thing?
Is it a male?
Is this a male approach?
I say it's a common sense approach.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a male to realize inconsistencies. So if it's a Muslima, a Muslim male, and you're having dinner with them, for example, across the table, whether you're a guy or you're a female, ultimately, if the person who is a Muslim holds to an idea that their book is truly from God, and I've heard many, for example, Muslim women speak very passionately about the beauty of the Quran. If it is indeed so beautiful, then how do you deal with the inconsistency? Now, I don't think it necessitates you being a man to be able to have a look at something that doesn't make sense or that contradicts itself and then say it's wrong. Potentially, you might have a different reaction to this realization if you're a man versus if you're a woman. Maybe, for example, being very generic, the man will instantly look to attack or to defend. And then maybe with the lady, she might be a bit more insightful and then take it away and then come back with an answer. So I don't think you should restrict it alone to just women, but just like, again, just men, sorry. But the main thing would be the approach. Maybe it's a different way of presenting this to somebody, depending upon this particular audience you're trying to reach.
Can I answer that real quickly also? And this is really where Beth and Parvana and Karen, these are women who actually use this approach. You did it for many years, Beth, down at the Speaker's Corner, and you always went to Surah 2 and Surah 4, those 7 verses. Chapter 4, verses 3, chapter 4, verse 11, chapter 4, verse 24, verse 34, and chapter 2, verse 282. Chapter 2, in fact, you did a whole debate on this, on just chapter 2, verse 223, and chapter 2, verse 230. So this is something women can do, because those are the verses in the women that really shut down this argument that the Quran honors women. But women can do this much more effective than I can do it. I can sit there and it doesn't look good. But if Parvana does it, or if Karen does it, and they have, and I've seen Beth shut down a debate with another woman on these verses. So it is available, it is usable, but you did it in London. And you did it here, so that I wouldn't have asked her to do this in Pakistan, obviously.
I think that it's fair to say that men engage in these kinds of debates and discussions more, and particularly within the Muslim community because of sort of gender expectations and so on. But one of the key things about this kind of debate is the way that it influences culture, the way that it influences. It speaks to a certain kind of person. It doesn't speak to every kind of person, but it speaks to a certain kind of person that likes to interrogate truth, likes to examine truth, and likes to evaluate truth claims, of which there are millions of people like that. And so this kind of evangelistic approach speaks to millions of people. And amongst that kind of people, who they see winning the argument will influence which faith they follow. It's not the only thing that influences them, but it's certainly one of the elements that influences their decisions. But I know a Palestinian Muslim who became a Christian, through this work, and she'd watched me and she'd been influenced by some of the arguments that I'd made that had made her question. The thing about these kinds of arguments is, depending on the argument that you use, you might land on that argument that just flicks a light on and gets a person asking questions. And that's what happened with this Palestinian Muslimah, and she's now a Christian. She's now married to a Christian, and thanks be to God. So it works for certain kinds of people who are that way minded, and they are both men and women.
Thank you. There's a guy in the north of England who's written a book called Encountering the World of Post-Islam. And he's kind of taken a review of different approaches to evangelism amongst Muslim people, all different things. And has said the people that seem to be coming to follow Jesus from a Muslim background are not generally directly converting from Islam to Christianity, but kind of go through an Muslim point of view, so kind of leave Islam in some way. Do you see this dilemma as kind of part of that? Obviously, you're Christian. I'm not saying you're not, and it's not evangelism, but do you see it more as destroying what they hold on to and then giving Jesus? Or how does it fit in with Jesus, do you think, and conversion?
Yeah, we'll see this a lot. There's like a pipeline where Muslims go to ex-Muslim and they're kind of like atheists or agnostic, and then they slowly move into Christianity. We're seeing this with Apostate Prophet, Ion Hursley, for example. And those are always great stories to hear. This is definitely just attacking Islam for sure. It's sort of showing there's a problem here. And often the psychology is they'll get really angry, they'll get very upset at their imams, their sheikhs, and they'll just rebel. Be kind, be comforting, be understanding. Don't just be like, well, now you got to come to church with me. Walk them through it. Be like, hey, I'm here for you if you want to talk. I understand this can be, harsh, hard to deal with. Be a friend, and then that'll help lead them into Christianity, hopefully.
Yeah, there's actually one of the priests that's attending this conference used to be a Salafi Muslim who came down to the corner. Me and him debated at the corner once. He got aggressive. But he stopped coming to the corner, but he kept watching the videos, and he told me today that it was one of my videos at the corner that got him thinking, and he left Islam, and now he's been a deacon in the Orthodox Church, and now he's a father in the Orthodox Church. So, like it does work. It does work.
Now, on that note, you will get Muslims that will come up with the craziest responses. So we were talking about Sajid earlier. Sajid's whole thing was like, well, the Quran is actually talking about some other book called the Injil. And so do kind of like what Avery was talking about earlier. So just start walking through with them. Okay. So you're telling me there was another book called the Injil that Jesus had. Great. Okay. Why didn't the New Testament talk about it? Why didn't the church fathers talk about it? So the Christians at the time of Muhammad had to have it, right, for that to be talked about. Why was it lost immediately after Muhammad? Look at how convoluted this is going. They have to posit this lost book that no one knew about until Muhammad. Yet the Christians in Arabia somehow had it. They didn't know about it in the rest of Nicene Christianity. Very odd. It's very convoluted. What's a simpler explanation? Muhammad made a mistake because he was illiterate. And they don't have to do that with just the Injil. They got to do it with the Torah too. The Torah. So Moses had a different Torah. The Israelites came up with their Torah, replaced it. It was somehow lost. It's somehow saved in Arabia. The church fathers also didn't know. But it's a convoluted nightmare.
It's a conspiracy theory.
It is.
It is.
Which are all true.
Yeah. Let them walk you through it. Let them sort of go and give them your long, convoluted explanation, and then just go, is that really the best explanation, or is it just simpler that Muhammad made a mistake?
I just want to add one thing, because notice that what Mike's just said. Now, we as Christians, we can make this argument perfectly great. And a lot of people tend to frame it as a Christian argument. And although we do use it, it is one of arguments Christians have worked on. It's also, nothing about it is particularly religious. Like an atheist, a Buddhist, anyone could make this argument as long as you're just not a Muslim. So there are plenty of other groups that also have noticed, hey, this Islamic Dilemma thing actually seems a really good argument. And they in turn also use it with Muslims. So I think it is like a pipeline. It gets Muslims to think critically about their faith, realize it isn't coherent, therefore it's false, they leave it, and then it's our job as missionaries ultimately to preach them the gospel and get them to accept our Lord Jesus Christ.
I would just point out, though, in my experience, your average Muslim is a better debater than your average Christian. Now, you guys are probably going to be the exception to that rule precisely because you're here. So you could probably hold your own in a debate with a Muslim, but the brothers and sisters that aren't coming to events like this, I see often getting tripped up by really easy arguments. And I think one of the reasons why Muslims tend to be better debaters is their faith is a legalistic faith. And so they argue over points of law, they argue over points of, and so in that argument, they're trained like, oh, you've got to pull in your evidence, you've got to show your sources, and so just within Islamic culture, there is a culture of debate that we don't have in our churches. And I think that we need to improve greatly, and this is what this conference is for, improve greatly and change the culture within the church so that apologetics and polemics becomes a very normal part of church life.
Yeah. I don't know if you're going to talk about retention. Are you going to bring a question about retention? Converts?
No, but you can.
Okay, let me just take the one next step, and that is when you look and see the kind of people that Bob and the rest of us are bringing to Christ, notice that they never go back to Islam again. What we're finding is using the friendship evangelism and the friendship method, even more so the C3, C4, C5 method of contextualization. They did a study last year, and they found that 90% of Muslims who have come to Christ, 90% go back to Islam within 10 years. If you love people into the kingdom, which we have to do, the difficulty is what happens when you stop loving them? Where do they turn? Who do they go to? They usually go back home again. And not all of us can keep loving them into the kingdom. At some point, there's going to have to be some propositional truth that needs to be added to that love. At some point, you're going to have to talk about Jesus' death and crucifixion. At some point, you're going to have to talk about the fact that Jesus, yes, claimed to be God. And yes, we do believe God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. You're going to have to get propositional truth in. And that's what they're doing. They're hitting at this level. And what we're finding is when people come through at that level, now it could be on the internet, it could be, yes, at Speaker's Corner. At that level, someone's going to have to bring them home and actually get them, introduce them into the kingdom of God, get them into a church. That's where the rest of you can come in. But what we're finding is those who do come in through proposition of truth never go back to Islam because they actually understand why is it that they believe. I'm finding MBB after MBB everywhere I go, especially in America. I can't say here because I've been in the last 8 years in America, and all the conferences. I am so disappointed with the MBBs I'm meeting there because they don't even know why they become a Christian. They just love the fact that this person brought them to the faith and are still driving them to the hospital, getting them jobs, and teaching them English. But they really don't know who Jesus is. They have no idea of why they're a Christian. They just love being a Christian. And as soon as the persecution starts, or as soon as that person moves on to another family and works with another group, they go right back home to where they're comfortable. So that's why this type of polemics is absolutely important, because you're going to get the best and the brightest. And once you bring them through, they're going to do a much better job of going back into their own communities than we can. First of all, at least myself, I look the wrong color. And I also don't speak the right language. And I also haven't brought up in a Western education environment. But the MBBs could go back and do so much more effective than we can. They know the culture, they know the language, and they are willing to go and, yes, be the Sauls who become Pauls, because they're willing to die for what they believe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think, that's a good warning to us that we do teach. We need to be teaching, discipling new believers as much as anybody else, but also our congregations, as Bob said, helping people to hold firmly to their own faith, to grow up in it, as well as to have good responses to arguments against Muslim people. I can remember our 5-year-old son, well, he's not 5 years anymore, but when he was 5, in school in Tower Hamlets, and his little friend Shihab said to him, if you don't follow Muhammad, you're going to hell. To which my son said, well, if you don't follow Jesus, you're going to hell. And then they went out and played football. Now, that was a 5-year-old conversation, and hopefully their conversations get better. But we need to equip our children. We need to equip our adults. We need to equip everybody to be able to speak boldly to Muslim people about these things. We should begin to wrap up. What one thing would you like us to take away from either this panel or today, each of you? What one thing would you like us to take away from this panel or from what you've heard or taught today?
So I'm going to go real quick with this.
Go for it.
I want you all to understand just how influential this argument is and how successful it is being, how well it's being used by Christians, everyone here on this panel, but also others who aren't here today. And it is having an impact. Yeah. And we are seeing people's lives change because it is ultimately making people critical of Islam and thinking, hey, I don't think I've got the right idea about this Muhammad. I think maybe the Quran isn't actually as coherent as I thought it was. Even the Quran seems to talk about the Injil and the Torah passionately in a way that, it's like writing love notes about these previous scriptures. The Quran loves these previous scriptures. So, there's all these is it's changing lives, and I think that's really encouraging. So it's a really good positive note.
Thank you, Bob.
I would say if there's one thing that you take away from this panel, it's what I say next. The average age of a Muslim in this country is 27. The average age of a Christian in this country is 51. Who do you think is going to be dominating the social media debate in our culture and influencing the next generation of youth? It is more than important, it is critical that the church gets onto social media, masters the art of using social media, and uses social media to evangelize. That is the place of public debate. It is not the street.
So, social media, use a dilemma. Michael.
I want to deal with one objection the Muslims will use is they'll go to Surah 548. If you go to just the standard Quran translations, they'll translate it as that they'll say like the Quran is the supreme authority over the Torah and the Gospel. That's a lie. That's an abject lie. The word there is muhaymin, and it means guardian or confirmer. There's an Islamic scholar named Sean Anthony who was just on Twitter or X today saying it means faithful servant. So they'll do things like that. Like they'll show you translations where it'll say things like, oh, the Quran's the supreme authority or the criterion over. And you need to press them on that. Okay, is that what the early translator said? Is that what the early commentator said? What does the word actually mean? I mean, so be expecting that. That is their go-to argument, and it's based on a lie. The one thing to take away from this, though, is just how easy it is to debunk this world's second largest religion. That should tell you this is all a house of cards. Meanwhile, in Christianity, we have the resurrection argument. We can stand on a very powerful argument that historians have written so many large books on. Atheists and Christian, atheists trying to solve the issue, Christians advocating for the resurrection. This is a massive difference here.
Thank you. Jay.
Sorry, I've been told to go. But
Jay wants the last word. Yeah.
Exactly. Just to go off of what Mike was talking about, I want to just make two quick notations. So regarding the usage of the word Mohammed, so there's a verse in the Quran, and I can't believe I'm forgetting it, but it's definitely there. I can bet my my left hand on it, not the right one. But effectively, it would be it says something to the effect of men are the Mohammed of women. So let's say their interpretation of Muhammad, supreme authority, is true. Does that mean that men are the supreme authority over women besides Allah and Muhammad? No, it wouldn't be the case. Something like faithful servant or protector makes more sense. And in that same context, if the Quran was a quote-unquote protector of the previous scripture, that would just mean that it confirms what is in those scriptures and isn't willing to see them being changed, despite the fact that the Quran at certain points severely disagrees with those scriptures, and that's a problem for the Quran to deal with, not the previous scriptures. And additionally, I would just like to say that for all those who want it, we all should hope that when we all grow up, we all sound like Jay Smith. Thank you.
I asked to go last because on this question, if this had been 20 years ago and we would be on a panel up here, it would be just Beth and me. We were it. We were the only ones that were really taking on Islam publicly. Sam Solomon was doing so as well, and Patrick Sokdeo, and that's about it. Interestingly, none of us are from England. Beth grew up in Zambia. I grew up in India. Sam Solomon grew up in Sudan. Patrick Sokdeo, he grew up in South America. None of us were English. Now look at us. Look, how are you seeing up here? I'm not alone anymore. We're not alone. Look at these young guys. Did you know the question he asked them, what are you going to take away? What are you going to take away from this discussion? They didn't even answer his question. They are still arguing the case. Did you get that? Isn't this amazing? Isn't this great? Look at the energy that's here. And look how much more eloquent they are than we were. And look at the material they have to run with. This Islamic dilemma, I wish I had this 40 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. But this is what we're producing, and this is the new generation. And these are the guys and gals who are going to take it. And I'm looking at all of you. You're going to take what you're hearing these 3 days, and you're going to take it back. You're from all over the world. There's people here from Australia, from Europe, from the United States. You're going to take this material. You're going to let these guys and gals actually put it together here, because London is the best place to do it. And Speaker's Corner is unique in the world. And they can go much quicker and much faster, and they can understand it and then model it for the rest of you. But that's what I'm going to take away. I'm so glad that I'm ready to retire. Well, okay, refire.
In a little while.
But what a great bunch of guys we're leaving behind who are coming to pick up the baton.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you, David, Jay, Michael, Chris, Bob. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you.